Okay, so Michael Kraft and I go back a long ways when he was with the SBDC. Through the economic recession, some things changed, and fortunately we found each other working together at Sequoia Personnel, and he worked for us for what, 5 years or so? And Sequoia Personnel, many of you know, changed hands at one point, so he had a really great job, I think, under our old owner, and he got to do special projects. He went to go out and find money, and we helped in a lot of different ways throughout the county, different special economic situations, and then we got a new owner, and they go, well, we don't do much of that, so do sales. And Michael said, okay. And he did that for a little while, and then we get this great client, Papa Barkley, and
I got this great.
yeah, he did.
What's this we crap?
So we had a lot less pain throughout the office. And then one day I come into work and he goes, well, sit down, I got some news for you. And Papa and Barkley recognized how valuable Michael was. And it's the first time I've been with Sequoia almost 14 years, and they poached somebody from us, damn it. But it was okay, because he's a lot happier in doing what he's great at and what he loves again. And I think he's being extremely successful over there, and it's great to have him. So round of applause for Michael.
All right, so when one thinks of cannabis in Humboldt County, you rightly think of cultivation. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about manufacturing and distribution, and we'll take several cuts of this. I'm going to move pretty quickly through this stuff, but we're going to use my own company as a case study for what's possible, and to some extent what's real. I'll give you a little bit of visibility on cannabis licensing locally in Eureka and Arcata, a little bit of what the economic impact of that looks like, some looks at local, national, and potentially international markets for cannabis, should the future play out in a certain direction, and how Humboldt can benefit from all of that. So, to start with, Papa and Barkley is a wellness-oriented cannabis company. I'm going to send around a couple of our products here. So there's two jars that look very similar. And one of these is a hemp balm, which means it has almost no THC in it. THC is what makes somebody high. It's high CBD. You hear a lot about CBD today, or in general.
Can we try this?
Yeah, please, feel free. The one that's not marked does have THC. It's got 3 parts THC to 1 part CBD. Both are designed to be put on aches and pains external to the body. That's most of what we're known for. We have in California the top selling...
I'm sorry. I inhaled.
It's not for that. It's way too expensive for that. There are better alternatives for that. And I should point out, Meg is my sister from another mister. We're not actually related. We just annoy each other on purpose. And so most of what we do are these things. We've got bath soaks, massage oils, balms, tinctures. We've got the top selling balm by quite a bit in California, the top selling tincture by a little. And then we've got respectable positions in some other parts of the California cannabis market. So locally and in the state of California, we've grown pretty quickly. There's a lot going on in this slide, and I'm not going to hit on every part of it. But basically, the upshot is right now we're approaching 100 employees in Eureka, and we're soon going to be 200 company-wide. We're starting to hire nationally for that CBD line, which is sold online and through stores in a bunch of other states. But we're beefing up our sales reps, so our out-of-state hiring will go up. And so far the ratio has been pretty close to half of our people being in Humboldt. The greatest number of those are production and logistics folks who come with supervisors and production managers. More and more, we've got, I'm smelling Papa and Barkley. There's an essential oil thing. The cops know this smell. They drive by and they go, oh, that's the Papa and Barkley smell. So If it smells like weed, we get in trouble. We get an odor complaint. If it smells like that, it's fine.
When you say you're looking to sell nationally, would that be, if it's CBD, does that have to be sold only where there's recreational or medical legal use?
No, I mean that the law around hemp is evolving very quickly and it's still pretty gray. But this is a hemp-based, non-THC line, and what our interpretation of where we are as a country is that you can sell that in 50 states. We expect to keep growing, and in a year, we're thinking that we'll be somewhere around 130, 140 employees in Humboldt County, and again, maybe double that throughout the country. From the beginning, the company has tried to pay reasonably well and have a benefits package. And so for those production workers, and Tomas knows this very well because Sequoia Personnel is our co-employer. So they handle all of our payroll, the benefits, a lot of the induction stuff, various HR kinds of things for us. And so when I brought us in, I would say, Mr. Chavez. It's rare for a cannabis company. We have a 401k plan. That is possible because of Sequoia Personnel / Cardinal Services. The whole banking deal is a real problem for retirement. And we've got a decent insurance plan, which is going to become a good insurance plan on October 1st. There's a lot that the company has done. And if you come to work for us as one of those hourly workers, you're going to start at $15 an hour in all likelihood. If you perform reasonably well, you should be making $17 an hour by the end of the first year. That's not wealth, but it is in Humboldt County considered into that living wage territory.
Are those full-time jobs?
Almost all, not all.
Gonna have to do better than that.
It's a
It's a big economic impact. Just building a
Oh.
total whiteout ad.
It's huge.
All right. So these numbers are a few months old that I'm about to share now, but in the trailing 12 months from back in the second quarter, we had spent about $9.4 million in Humboldt County. I'll show you how that breaks out in a minute. And we do pay quite a bit in fees and taxes, in part because distribution companies, which is one of the hats that we wear, do a lot of the collection and payment of taxes along the way in the supply chain. So our biggest single cost is raw cannabis. And I think most people know who live around here that cannabis prices took a hit through legalization. A lot of cultivators have had a tough time. But this is something that is, most of that expenditure was on stuff that 10 years ago would have been composted. It's trim. But now with the legalization, the emphasis on oils and that kind of stuff, you can extract a lot of value from that. And we've got 5, I'm not going to tell you what they are, they're cool, 5 core values. The unofficial 6th one is no cannabinoid left behind. We get it all. But we also paid a lot in payroll and benefits, and this will be much higher if you roll forward the next 12 months. About $2.5 million in property purchases. Now, that's not the value of the purchases we made. That's the money we paid out already on those. But like, we bought a Kmart. It was more expensive than that. Taxes. So the great majority of this is in the state, but we do pay to the feds, and if you are close to the cannabis industry, you know that it's treated in a very different way, like for cost of goods sold. So the tax rate tends to be higher, and they say, we hate you, we love your money, we hate you, we love your money. That's the federal situation. Changing gears a little bit, both Eureka and Arcata have promulgated pretty clear rules relatively quickly compared to the rest of the state. and have gotten a decent number of businesses through the licensing process. I'm going to estimate that there might be an average of about 2 licenses per business. So if you look at that number and divide in half, those are fully operational. There's a number of others working their way through the process. And this isn't everything. I didn't put cultivation up there, which Arcata has more than Eureka has. And testing, Arcata has 1 testing lab. The micro-business thing is kind of interesting. The Humboldt Patient Resource Center locally is an example of that. They can do cultivation, sales, various things under that license. And the way licensing works in the state of California, it's very divided up. But one of the key things is if you do testing, you can't do anything else. If you do anything else, you can't do testing. All the other combinations are possible. All right, so here's the trick here, right? So if you study economics, you know that this is a bit treacherous to try to figure out what's the effect of a job or dollar spent in the community. But we've done it a little bit. So the city of Eureka knows its cannabis licensees pretty well. And they have made an estimate of how many jobs this means. So 235 is at the low end. I think that's quite low. I mean, we're almost half of that, and there's many more. 500 is probably closer in my view. So at the high end, we're talking about a $22 million payroll. And then if you say, 1 job creates 2, at the high end, we're talking about 1,000. These are manufacturing jobs. This is the kind of industry that we export out almost everything. The money comes here. And then some kind of economic multiplier, 1.7 is relatively conservative, but a total impact between $16.5 and $37.5 million. That's actual money, that's real money, at least where I come from. We did sort of fun little things, said, okay, because Eureka was the one we had the best handle on, what's the percentage of employment that is? And we're thinking it's about 1% of the county's overall employment just in Eureka, just in cannabis distribution and manufacturing. And I can't actually even see my own math on there. All right, changing gears again. Let's talk about markets a little bit. And it's interesting, in the Western world, the long-standing prohibition is changing quite a bit. So the light blue areas are countries where nationwide there's full recreational legalization. So you've got Uruguay, that little dot down there, you've got Canada. Not a lot, right? The United States and the very populous country of India have basically state-based regulation. It's a little chaotic in our country. And then yellow shows medical but not recreational is allowed. And then that fuchsia color is thou shalt not, still banned. This is from a company called BDS Analytics, which are probably the best at knowing what's up in the cannabis market. This is another chart from them that kind of shows how the U.S. looks. And yes, it's a molecule. So the West Coast has a lot of full adult use. Northeast as well. The blue color is where there's medical but not recreational that's legal in the states. And you'll notice there's some pretty red states on that list. And then there's a lot in the middle of the country that haven't gone there or haven't gone there yet. Public opinion has changed a lot. So these two charts, one is from 95 to pretty current on the percentage of adults who believe marijuana should be legalized. The other is just kind of laws hitting in states that say, okay, back, this was us with medical, fair amount more medical. Now we start seeing Colorado and other states with recreational, and that has jumped. So a little thought exercise here. How will that happen? Now, it's not 100% sure that it will happen, but there are several paths that it might happen by. So the president, or just the bureaucracy, can deschedule this. Marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug, you probably know that. Pretty simple path through Congress as well.
Sorry.
Not that Mitch McConnell's going to allow it right away, but it's pretty
Gotta be a way
easy.
you can get from there.
All right, I'm not getting along with. So I'm having a little trouble with the machine here. The other two ways that this could happen are really old school, baked into the Constitution. Constitutional Convention or Constitutional Amendment. And for that, you need 3/4 of the states on board in either case in some way. And what's kind of interesting, all right. So that's what I just said. So 2/3 of the states already have, if you think back to that one chart, at least medical marijuana. We need 3/4. 13 states are considering this year or next year going there, so it gets past that. I'm not predicting a constitutional convention, just saying it might happen. All right. So I'm at 17 minutes, AJ, and you're standing here, so.
Oh, you have time. He just have you.
All right, I appreciate it. As a speaker, I'm kind of used to it.
Right.
The MC moves close, you're past your time. So, California is the biggest single cannabis market in the world, but it's not all of it. So this is legal cannabis sales last year. Legal. So 2.5 of $12.2 billion last year were sold in California. The illicit market is still much bigger. There are about between 400 and 500 legal dispensaries, fully permitted dispensaries in California. There are about 3,000 pop-up stores, and regulators try to close them down and they pop up somewhere else. So a lot of downward pressure on price, a lot of potential market for the legal market is going that way. That's just one way that the illicit market expresses itself, but it is one. So there's that sales number broken down a little more, still $2.5 billion. BDS Analytics tries to make a kind of standard unit out of this. So by the way they do it, about 174 million grams or units of cannabis were sold in California last year. Retail price about $14, 900 brands, 900 fully permitted legal brands. By the end of the first quarter, that number of brands had gone to over 1,200. So still pretty rapid entry into the market. There will obviously be a shakeout. We're all fighting for market share. We've climbed to the top of a couple little mountains, and we're fighting to stay there. By category, this is interesting. It changes a little bit from time to time, but concentrates have really caught up with flowers. The flowers, the bud, the stuff that you think of most often. Edibles are this orange section that are pretty big. Our part, so we don't get arrogant, because here we go. 4%, 2%. You know, we have a big share of really skinny pieces of a pretty big market.
Concentrates or is that vaping?
Yeah, it's stuff that goes in a vape pen, your shatter, your batter, your bubble hash. I learned a lot of new words in life. I'm a regulatory compliance guy, that's my day job. And it just cracked me up to see words like that, like keef and shatter, in regulatory text. I just thought, boy, is this a new world. I'm in this world. So what might we do? I mentioned one thing that's not in the slides that has to do with those illicit dispensaries, those not permitted dispensaries. Any time, if you want to support the legal market, any time that you have a choice, pay your own dollars there, but also support legislation or efforts that would stomp on that. So a little bit more about this, where this market might be. So these are estimates of the US market. So we've got beer on top. I'm a beer guy, you might be able to tell. $110 billion, really big. Cigarettes, $80 billion. Total demand for recreational cannabis, that's not legal sales in the States, that's total. Next, and then we have video games, donuts, your firearms. See now, if you have legal, this is the legal cannabis bar. I think then you want to eat organic produce. If you eat the illegal edibles, then what you're going to want to do is go to McDonald's. It's just bad for you. Don't do it.
Does the beer include alcohol? That's not just beer.
That's just beer.
Where's your alcohol?
Well, mine's right below. But this is clearly not everything. I mean, some joker went through and said, what kind of vices can I put on this list? Sorry about firearms being there, it wasn't my choice. And so the point is that the legal market 2 years ago was here, the total demand is up there. If we go fully legal in the country and take advantage of it, what does that look like? Even more if you add export, that's a guess, right? And so that's the opportunity. I'm going to send a couple of things around. Might be able to take a question or two. This is a guide on, if you're interested, take one of these. This is about cannabinoid, CBD, that kind of stuff. And this is the reason Greg Foster asked us to do this today. We did this slightly braggadocious brochure on our economic impact and a little bit on our charitable giving. And so that's a takeaway on just our company. So a couple of questions maybe.
You've told me, but maybe a lot of people don't know. What's the background behind the name Papa and Barkley?
So we have an origin story that happens to be true. Our founder, Adam Grossman, had a father who was bedridden, headed for hospice, and the doctor said if he doesn't get out of bed soon, he never will. They tried all kinds of stuff. Adam is an old-time cannabis user, called his dealer, got a crock pot, did some infusions with coconut oil, and put that on his dad's back, and within a day or two, Papa was up. Barkley was Papa's dog, so that's where it is. And you'll see on some of our branding that there's like a screen of Papa and Barkley, yeah, just inside there. So that's a real, both are now deceased, but those are the folks that we were named for.
What do you think the future is with respect to banks? When can the legal industry get loans?
It's really confusing. We're very fortunate. There are a very small number of banks and credit unions that have super high standards for who they will take in a out there cannabis industry. So we have banking through one of those. Could we get a loan from them? I don't know. We have financial services. We can cut checks in ACH. We can deposit. I mean, literally a truck drives up to Washington once or twice a week. It's that stupid. But that's what we've chosen to do. I think we're a ways off yet. That will require federal action. Every state that's trying to do it has gotten hung up.
And so, I'm sorry, is that a bank that only does business in that state?
It's a Salal Credit Union is who we have. They do various parts of business, but they do have a line that serves cannabis companies, and they're super rigorous. I mean, you know those, I forget the number of the federal form, but every time you take $10,000, you're supposed to.
Form 8300.
Thank you. They do an 8300 form on us every time they pick up money. They say, we got a bunch of cash from these people, could be suspicious. They work with their local federal regulators in Washington State to be very transparent about that. And so far it's working. But, you know.
So they are federally regulated, but.
Absolutely.
Interesting, okay.
Over here.
It seems like because of history and the kind of the trajectory of this thing that's just coming on, there's almost no information out there about what product to use and how to use them. It's pretty much, my sister-in-law tried this and that was too much and this was not enough, because there's different amounts of THC with all the different products. And it's a totally self-regulated, try it and see what works kind of thing. It seems like, I mean, I'd heard that the only real research on CBD that's been done has been by the country of Israel. They've actually studied, but until we get to a point where we say, well, I've got this malady. I mean, we're used to medical marijuana doctors, and all I do is write scripts for people to smoke this stuff. They didn't actually say, use this oil. For the most part, don't use this oil, use these drops, use this other thing. I mean, that seems to be the huge vacuum in that entire business. I mean, it's all word of mouth. Like, I tried this, or my sister-in-law uses it, my uncle uses it.
Still a lot of that, and you're absolutely right that the amount of research that's been done in the U.S. and a number of other countries is very small. Israel has done some. I mean, we're trying to do some amount of education. We're doing some things that are brand agnostic, like the website that is a complement to that plant-made thing. Have to work very hard to find any Papa Barkley branding on it. But, you know, I have my dad using one of our balms. And it was, you know, he got it from a guy, and I said, you know, try this ratio and then go stronger. Bud tenders at good dispensaries tend to be pretty well educated. Our brand ambassadors are. But I think what you have for evidence is a lot of anecdotes compiled rather than anything that would look like FDA research, except for outside of the country.
Other than dispensaries, where else are you able to distribute?
For the THC-bearing lines, nowhere. There are dispensaries that are not storefronts but delivery services, so they're able to go, theoretically, they can go to any residence not on federal land in the state. That's not in actuality what happens. We are working on a retail license specifically to be able to do our own direct-to-consumer for some very targeted populations, and to be able to sell at events and test our own products.
So even for the hemp, you can't go outside of the...
Sorry, I gave you half the answer. For our THC, what I just said is true. For the hemp products, we don't push them in California, so I don't actually know which stores it's in. And most of our sales, I do know, are online.
But like Wildberries is doing small hemp CBD things just in there, like when you check out, there's those, I'm sure that if you wanted to.
Sounds right. I don't actually know.
So in regards to what Craig was saying, does your company post on a website or on the product itself, this is the amount we suggest that you use to start with, and then how to scale up from there?
The plant-made website does some of that. We have a scientific panel that actually has some Israeli researchers on that panel. that help us. Probably our best single thing that we've done in that is a pack that has a 30-to-1 CBD to THC and a 1-to-30 CBD to THC ratio, and then have people, and it's tincture, and have people, you know, start low and work their way up. And it is true that everybody's different, so you're not going to get to, like with aspirin, you say, you know, take 2 with water. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see that.
And how does dosage work from product to product? Is milligrams of THC universal? Is it?
In California, it is. Everything, every package you buy from a licensed dispensary should have either grams or milligrams of that are in that and what a dose is. And the state's pretty prescriptive too about things like edibles. You know, a single edible can't be more than X. I think it's 50 milligrams, but I'm not positive. All right, so I think you are moving closely down for that other reason.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Brad.
I appreciate that. Industry, but thank you for presenting today on behalf of the Eureka-based Centers. We have made a donation to the Wheelchair Foundation and provide this to you as well.